In the last video that I posted, I wasn't able to use my microphone because I was at home, but I was making a framework for Unity to help me build games in the future, and hopefully I'll release this framework so that other people can use it. Last time I was working on a save feature. Unity doesn't come with a built-in save feature for its game engine. You have to build it yourself, and I managed to save any components, variables, down to disk and load them again. This time I'm looking at the way that Unity deals with character controllers, and something kind of interesting about Unity is that the character controller that it gives you that controls actors in the scene doesn't interact with rigid bodies very well, and one of the solutions to this is to add a rigid body to the character controller and then have that interact with physics objects, but it's kind of clumsy and messy. And what I mean by that, for anybody who doesn't really understand, is that the rigid bodies in Unity are the physics objects, but the character controller doesn't interact with the physics at all. Doesn't have gravity, doesn't push objects around, and isn't pushed by objects. That's not really good enough for the things I want to do. A lot of the time I end up using the rigid body controller and using a rigid body anyway to control my characters, because they interact with the world, and it's part of what a character should do in a game. It doesn't make any sense for it not to do that. So I decided to build a basic character controller that uses a rigid body rather than the standard default Unity one. And I'll just show what I mean about rigid bodies not, character controllers not interacting with physics objects. So the orange cube on the left is a physics object, it's a box, it can move, and the orange cube, the green cube on the right is a rigid body character controller I've made. The yellow one in the middle is the default character controller that's just set to move on 4-axis, up, down, left, right. So moves around like this, and when it bumps into things, it just sticks. It just doesn't do anything. It doesn't interact. It feels very solid, and it's fine if you were going to make a 2D. I don't know. See, look, no gravity. It just floats there. Let's get rid of that because it's annoying. We'll leave it over here because I need it a bit later. But that's not good enough. So instead, I got this guy who moves much more smoothly. He follows the mouse. He moves to the point where I last clicked. And he is using the rigid body controller that I've designed. And when he bumps into the box, he pushes it around. He's interacting with the box quite nicely. But yet again, he gets stuck on the character controller. So the character controller is annoying. It just gets in the way. It just damages things. The rigid body controller that I've designed can go up and down quite well. It seems perfectly fine from that respect. Anyway, so let's pop in some more boxes using my debugging tool. Just another part of the framework. I just like to chuck in lots. It just makes the scene nice and fun to play with. The frame rate's really high, so we can see he pushes them around really nicely. And he can be interacted by other forces as well. So if we create an explosion, and we can see that he's pushed around by the explosion, but this guy isn't. So there you go, the green one flies off, the yellow one doesn't. And suddenly this character's a lot more lifelike. He's changing the world, and he's a lot more interactive and real, whereas this one is very fixed, very static and boring. So yeah, that's what I've been working on, and it's really useful. I'm going to try and implement it with the nav mesh controls. So Unity has a navigation AI pathfinding tool, but it doesn't use rigid bodies either. It kind of has some rigid body interaction, but it's not quite right. So yeah, there's further implementation there, but this is really useful, especially sometimes if you don't want your character to sit straight upright, because the character controller that Unity supplies can only stay pointing in the Y direction, and the rigid body can obviously roll in any direction it likes. So yeah, that's what I've been working on in the last couple of days.